G'day and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our live weekly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Bill Davidson from Were Chili Bar Border Collies.
Bill will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they will win a bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
Hey Bill, how are you going?
Hi guys, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
That's the way. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for gracing us, mate, with your presence.
Not a drama, mate. You're doing a great job. I've just been listening to some of the podcasts over the last couple of months. Brings back a few memories, actually. Like guys like Steve Condell and Billy Luft and those guys. I remember spending a bit of time with those guys 20 years ago down in Henty and stuff. So, no, it's been good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear.
Thanks for the feedback, mate. And how's your day out there today?
Yeah, a bit warm, mate. A bit warm out in the field a bit today. Yeah, nice and warm.
Right, mate. Do you want to? We'll kick off here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, actually, I did start out working at a place, Jackaroon. Went shearing for a few years. Sort of got an injury then, and then I got a job for the DPI in ag research, breeding loosened varieties, and then I started to go into weed control fields, herbicide resistance and that sort of thing. So family always had places. The old man sort of sold out of his 10, 15 year ago now. So just on a few acres now, mate, trained a few dogs and going to work sort of every day,
yeah. Beautiful, mate. And whereabouts are you located at the moment?
Just out of Tamworth, like 14 k's out of Tamworth, sort of northwest.
Yep. Beautiful, mate. And while you're talking about the family there, mate, your stud, Were Chili Bar. A bit of meaning to that?
Yeah, mate, that's grandfather's place out west there near Mount Hope, which is sort of almost central west if you look on the map of New South Wales. Sort of 80 miles west of Mount Hope, I believe. So it's an old, name of the family place out there. Just decided to go with that name. Yeah, when I years ago when I had to select my prefix for my dogs. Yeah.
No, awesome to have a bit of meaning behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you want to tell us a little bit about where you grew up and sort of how you got to sort of doing what you are today?
Yeah, so we always, as a kid, we moved around a bit. We sort of moved to 3 or 4 different places, all on properties. So working farms, so we're always around sheep, cattle, livestock, dogs. They were pretty ordinary dogs, but they compared to, some of the control on some of the dogs these days. But they got the job done for us. So originally, when I was very young, I was sort of born in Sydney, then went out to Wachilla Bar until I was about 2, and then we moved to a place between Molong and Wellington, near Native Dog Creek there, called 3 Rivers. Left there in about 83, then went up to the Northern Tablelands, north of Glen Innes there at Deepwater for another 6 or 8 years. Another, pretty big sheep place. We had 7,000 sheep there, 200 cows and calves, that sort of thing. And and then I went away to school for a couple of years, and I went Jackaroon down at Dubbo, down at Roseville Park for a bit, and then then the old man bought a place up in Nundle in some really steep, sort of hilly, rough country that we really needed better dogs and more control on our dogs, and that's when I suppose the fire got lit with the dogs a fair bit. Was trying to get some better dogs, get some better control, better handle on our dogs for work and livestock in that country. It was right on the top of the Great Dividing Range there, southeast of Tamworth. Unless you had good dogs, you just couldn't do your job. So, that's when me and the old man really together, I suppose, tried to get some better dogs and try and get a bit of education around, getting that control, a bit more handle on the dogs. Like the dogs previously on the previous farms was a lot easier country to manage. So we obviously needed dogs, but you didn't have to have you probably didn't have to have as good a dogs because you could do a bit more with the vehicles and whatever else. But in this country, some of it you're flat out standing up to lead a horse in. It's pretty rough, and so you really need to do the job for you. So.
Gee, you've seen a bit of different land, mate.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, we have. Like, I'm just a little hobby farmer now. Like, I've got to make up work for my dogs now just through training. It was for a while I was going out to Dad's place and helping him weekends and holidays and stuff a bit, and so I still had a bit of farm work for him, but that sort of ended 10, 15 years ago. So now it's just straight out any work I've sort of got to make it up for him just through training and stuff like that. So but like I say, we sort of we kicked off. I actually went to a Pip Hudson school. It was between Orange and Bathurst in '91. It was a really enjoyable weekend. Pip run a great school there, and that sort of lit the fire. And so I was after up, and I sort of snuck up to Pip after the school had finished and sort of built up the courage and said, "Oh, geez, you haven't got a pup, mate, have you?" He said, "Yeah, look, I have. I've got a red bitch here. It actually goes back to a real good bitch that Mick Hudson had, which is called Yana. I think she might have been the grandmother of this pup or something like that." So we got her, and then so he's a red border collie. So it was by a dog called Nicky Webb. So it had a bit of Western Australian blood in it. And then the next year, the old man bought a red and white bitch off Mick as well. So we both had a red and white, bitch each, border collie, and we ended up swapping those round. And and we sort of chased those dogs off Pip and Mick. That just because you could trial them, but also they was practical, like they were used on their farms out there, Cobar, and if a dog had to be good, or just wouldn't survive out there. So we that's how we started, with trying to chase up some of our, border collie type dogs that we could trial, but dogs we could work on the farm as well, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think you mentioned a dog, Nicky Webb there. That was a famous person's name, wasn't it? So that person, just trying to think, I know there's a couple of people out there that name their dogs after famous people. That just got me thinking for a minute there.
I'm not sure, actually, mate. This guy was from Western Australia. It was funny, when I was jackarooing there in '89, first time I ever went to mow along 3 sheep, and I was watching a bloke work his dog, sitting there, and I didn't know what was going on. And he was at the bridge, I think, and he had this little red dog, and he gave this command. This little dog shot back 100 miles an hour, and I nearly sort of fell off my chair. I was like, geez, bloody hell, how'd he do that, I was bloody gobsmacked.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, geez, this would be all right to get into. And then I had a couple of injuries playing footy, and so I had a chance to get into it. So I got into it a few years later after went to Pip school. So,
and seeing so much different type of terrain, did you approach the work the same, or did you look for different dogs, or did you change your own mindset?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. So we're looking for, in that, when we went from the flat country to the sort of steep rough country, we're looking for dogs that were pretty clever around their stock and could sneak, because we used to get, because it was so rough and that, sometimes you miss muster, and often you'd go up there, you'd get your main muster done, but there was also always a few cunning ones sneak around somewhere, so you'd be going back up there after, to clean the muster, and sometimes you might only get 4 or 5, so you needed a dog that could obviously handle a big mob, but it could also be pretty clever and sneak 4 or 5 sheep out or whatever out of this rough country down to the rest of them. So, and then also with that, you had to have good control. So that's what I say, we're sort of looking for those dogs that had a bit more finesse about them, I suppose, but still had that sort of practical work. And as far as the mindset goes, we were looking at trying to educate ourselves by going to school. So went to Pip school. I went to 2 or 3 of Greg's, because Greg was bloody standout man, when we got going. along with some others like Les Armstrong and Louis Noble and Johnny Perry and Laurie Slater, all those guys, when it got going. So went to, just annoyed the crap out of them, asking to go to schools and stuff, and just as much as trying to help us, our dogs on the farm, as well as, I was keen and the old man was keen on getting into trial, and so just trying to get a bit better at that,
Yeah, absolutely.
And in all that time, have you noticed a change in the way people handle their dogs and their stock?
That's a good question. I think when we started, as quite a few of those trialers still had a lot of practical work for their dogs. When you think of Pip still had his places. Greg had a truck, I think, at that stage. So he was working the sale yards, working in the truck with his dogs. Laurie Slater was working on a place. Johnny Perry was a shearing contractor working on a place. Tony, Teddy Day, Toby Lindsay was a shearing contractor. So the list goes on and on and on. So the dogs were a bit sort of a little bit more dog in them maybe than some of the dogs. Not saying there's not some dogs around today that got plenty of dog in them, but the demographics probably starting to change a little bit. There's probably more people from the city and more ladies and stuff that haven't got access to that general farm work. So there is a little bit of difference there. Yeah, if you think about that, there's still guys, an odd guy that's got their place like Mick and Tony Elliott and those sort of guys still got their place and, working their dogs on it. But just in the free sheep game, maybe not as the dogs maybe don't get as much sort of farm work as what maybe they used to. I don't know.
Yeah. And talking about, like you mentioned, three sheep there, how about cattle work, mate? Have you done much cattle work in your time?
Yeah, mate. When I was younger, up in the hilly country, we used to we had Angus cows and calves and trade cattle. 500 or 600 Angus cows, breeders, and mostly we used to sneak them out with our sheepdogs. We just just supposed to be careful. We didn't have any mad swinging dogs and anything like that, mate. We just handled them really careful and just tried to work them on the edge of the bubble and tried not to upset them and keep it all quiet. And we're on horses and that, so mostly we got away with it, mate. It just depends, I think, on how you're handling them and if you handle them well and educate them to the dog. Sometimes an odd dog would get carted a bit by a cow and calf, but you just let it settle back down and call your dog off and then just poke around on your horse and poke them back in, mate. And if you kept it all nice and calm, you really didn't need any mad biting, silly dog on them. So but that was a while ago now. So
what made you and your dad go down the line of collies? Like, we hear the debate all the time, but what was the reason back then for it?
Well, actually, I started off with a Kelpie. I got a bitch off when I just finished uni off a mate, and it was by Chris Stapleton's watch. And I thought he was a hell of a dog. I watched him in the yards and different thing. And and the bitch that my bitch was out of was quite a handy paddock bitch. So anyway, I got her and I worked her on the farm and three sheep in Yarda, and she was really clever in the paddock and stuff. But getting back to your question, but then because we were interested in three sheep and it was mostly collies doing it at that stage, it was probably only the whites and maybe Kevin Howe who had Kelpie in it really. It might be an odd other one, but the rest of them were collies. So, the collies were bred for it, been bred for it for a long time and were the most successful. So we sort of chased the collies and maybe the collies had a bit more bite on the cattle too, maybe. Than maybe the Kelpies, But the old man, he had Kelpies as well. He had Kelpies and collies on the farm. He had a Kelpie dog there that, he could work three sheep to trial. Work in the yard, work cattle, was one of the best all-round dogs I've seen. He's a red and tan Kelpie. So, I sort of don't get hung up on not having this breed or not having that breed, but it's just that we bred the strain of the Border Collie, for the 3 sheep. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair enough. You mentioned uni. What did you study at uni?
So I did so I got out of school, went Jackaroon for a year, and then did a farm management course there at Orange.
Yep.
And then I got out of that and started shearing and said, no, bugger the farm management. I want to go shearing for a while. So I did that.
Yep.
Yeah, worked on places for a bit. Yeah, which was good. I sort of was
Yeah,
my own
beautiful.
boss. I really enjoyed it. So
You ever get yourself in a predicament and go, shit, that farm management might have come in handy now?
yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, but mate, I've been pretty fortunate how things have turned out. So yeah,
Everything happens for a reason, mate.
exactly.
And mate, you touched on your dogs there, mate. Have you got a particular type of style that you prefer?
Yeah, I suppose when I started off, there was a couple of dogs that I really liked. Well, actually, the first dogs that sort of caught me eye were probably Les Armstrong dogs, those Alpha ones. Just how feely and how much good balance they had and how clever they were on their stock. And then I seen a couple of dogs. Greg had a bitch called Wandara Die, and then he had a dog out of that bitch called Clyde. And then they were dogs with plenty of dog in them. And then Johnny Perry had a dog called Breadbay Steve that I really like. And Pip Hudson had a dog called Windy Pippi. They just appealed to us at the time, because you could 3 sheep them. They had all the class and, all that you wanted for 3 sheep, but they still had plenty of dog in them. And that sort of appealed to me, and it sort of still appeals to me a bit. Maybe, I don't need plenty of dog in them, but I sort of like a bit of dog in them. I like a bit of desire. I like the softness. You got to have the nice work and the softness so that stock accept the dogs. But for me, I just like that bit more desire when it's it's a bit hot or things are a bit hard. They'll keep trying for you. Those ones sort of slacken off on you a bit. They give me the irrits a bit. But
Do you find those dogs with a little bit of dirt in them go that extra mile for you?
Mate, I don't know. I wouldn't call it dirt, Dan. I'd sort of say just more desire. Like sometimes those.
Yep.
I sort of see what you're getting at, but sometimes those dirty dogs too, they're a bit like cheap shop merchants. They're looking for an opportunity to fly in and get them when the sheep can't get them. Because there's a bit of fear there sometimes.
100%.
Yeah, so it's more, mate. It's more those dogs that really, they more or less die for you. They just keep trying and trying and trying for you. Just keep in the back.
I suppose I suppose I'm also speaking about younger dogs. Like I see a few and you hear comments and they go, "Oh, that young dog's a bit dirty." I'm like, man, it's 6 months old and it really wants to have a crack. I'd rather see something like that than something that's just floating around the outside and not really showing me too much and not a bit disinterested.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's right. When they're young, starting out, it might be just a bit of nerves or just being in close contact with sheep. Bringing out a little bit of stuff. Yeah, that's fine. That's just as if they get older and they it becomes a habit and they start doing it through out of a cheap shot or something like that. Well, it's it becomes a bit of a concern then. But no, I can get what you're saying there. Yeah, for sure.
So, just how do you decide, while they're a young dog, whether it's dirty or whether it's, a bit of nerves? Like, how do you know that, obviously you've had your hands on a lot of dogs, how do you decide the difference whilst they're young? Can you?
It'd just be circumstances how it happens.
Yep.
If the dog's got to go around a real tight fence and it's right up against a sheep and it has a little grab, then as in the sheep, you've got to almost do that for the sheep to move out of its way. I don't mind that. But if it's sort of more in the open and the dog launches, from the edge of the yard into the middle of the yard where the sheep are, well, that's probably a bit more of a concern, that one, So I'll be more wary of that dog than the one that was just trying to make its way tight around a tight yard or something like that. that doesn't worry me too much. That shows a little bit of initiative, like the only thing they've got to defend themselves against is their teeth. So, just in that situation, it's probably good work for a pup to find a way to sort of get past that sheep, without getting hurt. So,
No, that makes sense.
Absolutely, mate. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your current team?
Yeah, mate. So I've got a bitch here I call Stormy. She sort of goes back a bit to the Princess Clyde and a bit to the Hudson stuff, and then she's got on one side, and then she's got Wandara sort of on the other side. So I had a bitch here called Abby, Wichilibar Abby, who had a bit of Clyde, bit of Princess Toby, and that sort of blood in her. And then I bought a dog off Mick Hudson because he'd had a bit of that Clyde stuff and a bit of the old Hudson stuff in it, and a bit of the Wandara, the nice balancy feel stuff. And I put him over this bitch, and I kept the litter, and I kept her, and she's not the best bitch going round, mate, but she's all right. She's got a bit of feel and that about her, and she's a nice, honest little dog. She tries hard, she's got her faults, but then I've got another one, a white bitch I got off Grant Cook in Western Australia, Grass Valley Flake. She's by a boy lead dog out of a bitch that's by one of Grant's good old dogs, Moss. So I quite like her. And then I've sort of got another dog off loan, and then I've got another dog that I got off Johnny Perry, a black dog. And then I've got a Kiwi dog there that I'm hoping to start at sometime this year. And then I've got a couple of pups. So, yeah.
Plenty to feed.
You got your hands full.
Plenty enough, heaps to feed, yeah.
Mate, you're talking about a little bitch there, and you said, she's not, she's not the best dog in the world. You said, but she's honest. What's honest to you? How do you?
Oh, she's a pretty, tries to respond to your commands, try to work for you, and just keeps trying for you, keeps trying for you and tries to work with you. And you sort of know what you're going to get mostly when she comes out, to work for you. So that's probably what I say.
A really good attitude.
Yeah, attitude when I'm talking about an honest dog. Yeah. Yep.
And what are you looking for in your own line these days?
Well, I reckon I've got enough softness. I need a little bit more dog, I reckon, just to suit me, for me to probably, to be able to compete at my best. I reckon I just need a little bit desire in some of them. So that's probably something I'm trying to, fix up or trying to add into my team, if you like, and a little bit of force, a little bit of clean walk-up force. I'm lacking a bit of that. So, the couple of them, they got pretty, nice style and stock, accept them and all that, and they're not too bad to work. But, they just need a wee little bit more dog in them, a bit more practical dog in them. And, that's what I'm that's what I'm aiming for anyway.
Yeah.
Always striving for something, right?
Yeah, there's always something to improve on, Dan. Yeah. And, and you got to try and, look to the future and try and think about how you're going to improve your dogs and going forward, and, what the faults are, and trying to, you will never get rid of all the faults, but, trying to make those faults as small as possible, have at least the effect as possible,
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And do you like a team of similar dogs, or do you like a bit of variety within the pack?
Actually, I don't mind a bit of variety, because you'll often go somewhere and one lot of sheep will, suit this dog and they won't suit the other dog, and then the next one you go to, they'll suit this dog but they won't suit the other dog, So there's some similarities that I want, like I want them, they've got to have good trainability. They've got to have good bit of, nice balance and try to get a bit of feel and all that sort of stuff, and arc around their stock. But other than that, I don't mind if there's a bit of difference in their style. No, no, so because I know that some of those will suit some and some won't, so
Yep.
it sort of evens itself out.
Try and have as many situations covered as possible and different types
That's
of
the plan,
stock.
mate. Or have that even, try and have a dog. Well, that's the aim. I try and do is try and have a dog that will handle most types of sheep, so it can handle a softer type sheep or handle a heavier, harder type sheep. Doesn't always go like that, but that's that's the aim. So
And what about influential dogs? You've had any that really stood out to you over the time?
of mine or other dogs in the breed, or
Well, I was going to say yours, and then we'd get on to others. But if you want to answer both, I'd go for it.
yeah, right. So I always liked, like I said, Alfredale stuff, Wandara stuff, and then when Greg got his good line of dogs going, they sort of went back to that. So you had Seville's Bill, Wandara Die. They were sort of, like bloody gold back there in the 90s, early 2000s. Like, that cross produced a lot of good dogs, So dogs like Clyde and Princess Jill and Anna and Princess Wall and all those sort of dogs. There was hardly a bad dog in that cross. I don't know, just the cross clicked or whether it was because of Die. Like Greg always said that Wandara Die would throw a good dog to a poodle, just one of those. One of those unreal brood bitches. So if I'm looking back through a pedigree and I see, Bill Die or Wandara or a bit of Alfredale, that's sort of going to suit me, hopefully. And that's sort of why any dogs that I've had success with probably go back to Bill Die or something like that, Wandara, Alfredale, back further, whatever, or a bit more Wandara of late too. They're the ones that I've had, probably the most success with, probably being my more successful dogs. So, yeah, that's sort of what I'm chasing. So,
And what about one of your own, mate? Was there one that stood out to you, and what made it special?
yeah, it's probably my best trial dog was probably a dog called Wachillaba Luke. So he was out of a Bill Die bitch, Princess Spec by Roman Ed II. He was a bit of a slow starter, but he just was a real natural dog. He had real good natural balance and feel on his stock. And he could handle most sheep. Like he could, if the sheep were a bit towy, you could sort of hold him off a bit and get the sheep looking at, he'd get the sheep to look at him and he'd sort of settle them that way, and then you could go on with it. And then if the sheep were big, heavy wethers or something, he had enough sort of guts, he could sort of go on with it too and control them. So I'd have to say, he was probably the trial dog that sort of stands out to me. I had a couple of others. They were pretty handy, but if I had to pick one, it would have been that dog. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. There's a question here from Denny Kerr, and he's asking what bloodlines are you liking these days?
Yeah, so
you've sort of already answered. Yeah.
Yep. So I like dogs. Mick's got some nice dogs there, like that Richie's Fin. It's a good of dogs I've seen for 10, 15 years. It's a really nice bitch. So it's got the Wandara and the Alfredale stuff. So and that rabbit, MGH rabbit, it's a real nice dog too. So I like the bit of the Malcolm Taylor stuff in it as well to go along with it. And then, so that it's the same old story. It's that Wandara, Alfredale, and it's anything goes back to Clyde, Bill Die, and I know it's getting a bit far away now. And also, I don't mind some of Grant Cook's dogs over there in West Australia. Some of that Grass Valley stuff. They're a bit more still free sheep, but they're practical farm dogs as well. So, I like that sort of stuff. And I'm sure I've missed a few, other
It's
Just
always the way you'll come back to us during the week and go, oh, these ones.
yeah, that's right. But just just thinking off the top of my head, like the bloodlines that I sort of like and sort of be chasing and breeding, probably
Yeah.
down to those sort of lines. I think
Yeah. But even like on Denny's question, you're still going back to those same, prefixes and stuff that they were breeding, you're still seeing in your line and still enjoying and liking. So there's a fair bit of consistency in that.
there is. The only trouble is, Laura, they're getting a little bit further and further away. So
Yeah.
and it's getting a bit harder to, when you go and breed a dog to sort of, get that stuff. But you can only do what you can do and sort of breed with what dogs are available, So and
Yeah.
there'll be dogs turn up that it'll be the next big thing, or so the next will breed the it'll be the next Bill Dyes or the next this or the next that. So
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's probably dogs when we hang up, I'll probably think of like you said there, of this. So yeah.
And you've mentioned three sheeping a bit there. How important is natural heading and natural cast to you? And do you think that like heading ability can have some deterrent on your cast?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how you mean heading correlates to the cast there.
A dog that wants that's really hard on the head can like kind of cut in a bit, and kind of take a bit of shape away.
Yeah, right. So for me, when you say heading, I sort of refer to that as just a dog that gets to the front and holds up its sheep. But I see what you mean. So it's like sort of shouldering on the cast. Is that what you mean? Like
kind of just comes in. A dog that's hard on the head kind of sometimes doesn't want to get out as far because it's so intense about losing its stock that it doesn't want to give body or shape.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I would get yeah, that's maybe not as big an issue as you think. I've often seen dogs that I break in that have been the hardest to get the cast off and ended up a good dog. And it's because of that, because they want to hold their sheep. They don't want sheep to get away. So if you can get up there and educate them and fix up their cast, often they can turn out all right. It's those dogs I worry about that when you first go to cast them and they just hit out on the fence and want to stay out away from their sheep all the time. So they're real easy to teach to cast, but they're the ones that worry me because I worry about them. They're not going to hold up to their sheep. They're not going to be able to move sheep or hold ground on sheep. The sheep will start taking ground off them when the pressure comes on them. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So to you, you're sort of you're liking a dog that holds its stock together because you're sort of saying cast can be taught.
Absolutely, yep, absolutely. I'd rather the perfect world. If you get a dog natural cast and hold its stock up, well, that's what you want. But if I'm going to pick one or the other, I'd pick to educate the cast over having to bring a dog in to hold it up, hold proper distance and hold its ground on sheep, because that's the hardest thing you'll ever have to teach a dog is teach a soft dog or a wide dog to come in and hold up on sheep. It's a lot easier to get a dog out than get him in, I can tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I thought I'd ask that question because I actually seen a comment on Facebook, a question on Facebook only about an hour or so ago. I thought, I'll just ask it, and you answered that really well. I like the way that that you went about that. And you mentioned about teaching your cast. The dog that's hard on the head, without getting into going like too much detail, because we could sit here for hours. What's a special, like a technique you like to use for a hard heading dog?
I think the last thing you want to do with them is chase them round. Like the harder the dog, I think in some ways the softer you got to be in your body language and all that. So what I do, if I get a hard running dog like that, rather than me, I'll try and go up near my sheep and keep him out of the top. But if I see him starting to go hard and cut in, I'll just stop him. That's why it's important to, the cast is one of the last things you teach, because you've got the stop and the sides and everything on your dog. So if he looks like he's cutting in, I'm in position there, I'm in control, so I can just stop him where he starts to cut in, then I'll just get over towards him and just affect him with my body language and just sort of kick him out again. If he starts coming in again, I'll stop him again, and same thing, rather than, hoiking sticks and roaring at him and chasing him and what that only just makes him harder and want to come in closer and just chase him. So that's the way I'd sort of go about it. Yeah.
That's got me thinking. That's really good, some really good advice there, mate.
Yeah. And you mentioned that stop on the cast. How do you teach the stop? Because obviously you can't teach that cast if they're like that without a stop.
Absolutely. So you just, the stop's the basic foundation. One of the, besides balance, stop's one of the basic foundations of your training. So that's sort of taught early on. Once you got your dog balancing is, a really important thing for your dog, and you should take as much time as you can teaching your dog to balance properly, and hopefully if you've bred a good line of dogs, you won't have to do much educating on how to get them to balance, but it's always good just to spend a heap of time without command and just teach your dog, get your dogs to balance and let them read their sheep. And then, so once you get that, then, your stop might be, or some blokes do it at the same time, but the stop might be the next step and getting that good stop and getting your sides on. So that's all done. For me, that's all done in close proximity to stop for a start on sheep or whatever you want to do it in a yard, whatever works for you on quiet sheep out in a small area. And then you get all that down and do a fair bit on that and do your off-balance work. And then, like I said, the cast is sort of going to be towards the end of your education or your training. So,
yeah.
So you'd like a fairly biddable style of dog as well, then?
Well, mate, I think you got to have that for 3 sheep these days. It's pretty competitive, and I'm sure it's probably the same in yard dogs and cattle. If your dog's not listening, and don't worry, it happens to me a lot too.
Me too, don't worry.
Yeah, it just makes it a lot easier, mate, if they're not fighting you. It's going to be times you still got to have the dog thinking for themselves and leave the dog in the dog. You don't want to make them robots, but at the same time, you got to be able to get that command over instinct in certain instances, So you've got to have control when you want it. So
yeah. So on that, then, how important is strength?
Yeah, listen, it's pretty important at different times, and it's always good to, the name of the game is to get the job done and get them in the pen. So, strength's part of it, but, some of the guys now are very clever at working these softer dogs and sort of just working them on the edge of the bubble and affecting movement without them being the strongest dogs going. And, so they get the nice soft dog and has the nice effect on sheep, but they still get the movement off sheep through good training and stockmanship and all that. But, you've still got to have somewhere along the line, not always, but there'll be, some days where you need that nice walk-up strength and you keep coming. And so, if you got that in the kit bag, you're going to be better off, aren't you, when you run into those situations. So, like I said, some days you'll hardly need it. But then there'll be instances where, you're going to need some. And, so, it's pretty important part of the show. And, if you can breed a dog, like I said, that's got that softness but got that nice, clean, calm walk-up that's confident and hasn't got the jump in it and, nice and clean on stock without grabbing them and stuff, it's going to be a big bonus to you. It's going to help you.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you trying to identify like a pup? Like you mentioned about strength earlier, that's something you'd like to add a little bit of raw strength. Like, how are you identifying those pups at 8 to 10 weeks when they're ultimately you're sifting through a litter and going, well, I can't keep the whole litter.
Well, it's almost how do you pick a pup, isn't it?
Well, yes,
that is a bit. But the best thing to do is probably just get some nice quiet sheep and put them in a small area, and obviously. You want sheep that aren't going to hurt the dog, and make sure you got that right. You don't want aggressive sheep or anything. Yep. So nice, quiet sheep, small, and just put the pup in there, and hopefully they might have started to work or whatever, and just see how they react towards sheep. You know, do they show confidence around sheep? Do they show fear? You know, and there'll be a difference. You know, if you put all your pups in there and they're provided they're working or showing a bit. You know, so if you want a strong pup, you know, so you're really looking hard when that pup goes around a sheep, what that sheep does and how that pup reacts to what the sheep does, you know. So you go around there and the sheep sort of stands there and looks at it and the pup starts, you know, really pooping itself and wanting to let out of the yard. And then you got another pup that goes around there and sheep looks at it and he just stops there and not too concerned. Well, you know, you're probably going to lean towards that other pup, aren't you? The one that's not too worried and, you know, shows a bit of confidence. So that might be one way. I don't know. But like I say, it's only early days too, 8 or 10 weeks. So, and they're still developing a bit. So,
are you assessing them off stock as well? Like just observing?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially like confidence and their attitude and how they respond to you, respond to people, respond to noise, outside noise, and whether they're nervy or whether they're calm and all that sort of stuff. You know, looking at them all the time. And that's going to play a decision, you know, in which one I keep and which one I don't. You know, if you got a pup that you got them out in the yard and then a bit of a noise happens or a dog comes running over and see your pup fly around and head for the back of the pen, well, you're going to start to worry a bit about that pup. So, and you probably it's going to, you know, have a bearing on your decision whether you're going to keep it or not. So, yeah, it's all that sort of stuff.
Are you doing much training off stock with young pups or not?
Yeah, if I'm not too slack, I do. Like, not heaps, like just getting them to follow you and getting them on a lead and, you know, all that's getting them to sit maybe and just handling them up, you know, getting them on their side, getting a bit of respect like that and make sure you can, you know, touch them all over, whatever, roll them over and they don't get offended, all that, whatever handling you can do, take them in the vehicle, you know, all that sort of grounding stuff's only going to help them, isn't it? So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
And are you breeding many of your own pups?
Mate, I don't breed a lot. Probably 1 litter a year or something like that. Yeah, pretty good for me. So something like that. Yeah, I don't breed a lot. I just breed. I can't sort of have too many dogs here just where I am. So sort of got to watch the numbers a bit. So, yeah.
No, that's fair enough. But when you are looking, you mentioned there obviously those lines you like to see in your dogs and they seem to work for you. Are you line breeding or are you using just like to like, or do you have a bit of a theory there?
Yeah, I'd prefer, like it always doesn't happen, but this I'd like to see a bit of common blood there on one side, if you know what I mean. Towards, and I want to see the common blood towards the stuff that I like. So the little bitch that I've got here that I don't mind, she's got this blood that I like on both sides, if you know what I mean. So so I could, if I wanted to fix up, you know, a trait in her, in my dogs or something, I'd, you know, for example, hypothetically, I'd put a dog over her for the trait that I want, and then I can try and get back towards that blood again, you know, once I've got that trait or outcross or like say if I can't do that, well then I'm trying to breed like to like. So that's sort of how I approach it.
And for you, what makes a bitch good enough to breed from, I guess?
Yeah, so, you know, if it's got those sort of main traits that I'm sort of looking for, you know, so balance, it's got to have nice balance on the stock, feel, got to have good temperament, so it's responsive. Good nature, I like a bitch with good nature, athletic. You know, I'd like to see a dog with nice movement around its stock. That's good on its feet, you know, quick on its feet, good on its feet, all that sort of stuff. So that, and then, you know, if I can get it, can't always get it, but a bit of strength as well to go with that. And ideally, you know, can do a bit of practical work for me as well, you know, like so if I wanted do a utility trial or something like that, or go and get a mob of sheep in somewhere one day. Or if I, farmer wants a pup or something, I've got that little bit of practical ability in them as well, they're just not 3 sheepdogs. So, that's probably the ideal that I'd try and chase, yeah.
And you've mentioned some dogs there, like that are fairly old dogs. And do you have an opinion on AIing to dogs that have been dead for some time, rather than looking for something that's around at the moment?
I think if maybe it'd be worth a try if you really like, if there's a really super old dog that you really liked and bred, and the dog bred a lot of good dogs, and and the semen got checked out, the semen was all right, it'd be no harm in trying it. Try it once and see what happens, if you get the opportunity. But if there's like say, if there's another dog there that similar breed and it's, a real nice dog itself and throwing good pups, well, you may not have to do that. So it's just going to depend, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all a gamble, right?
Yeah, and if it might be
Yeah.
one of those instances where if you lose your breeding or lose your line or you're in danger of losing your line, you might have to, risk and, try that semen from that dog that hasn't been around for a fair while.
Yeah.
If it means keeping your line going or, stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm. And any advice to someone wanting to purchase their first dog or pup?
Yeah, I mean, go and just have a good look around for a start, and whatever game you're getting into, whether it's cattle yard, 3 sheep, whatever, go and have a look at all the good dogs, go to some events and talk to people, and everyone's pretty approachable in the dog game. They'll soon talk to you and answer your questions, and make sure you watch them a few times. Don't just go off, one run on one day. Try and, if you can, you can't always, but try and watch them 3 or 4 times and see how they go on different types of sheep and see how they react to pressure, and and sort of find out, are they the genetics like, how successful are they being, grandparents, parents, all that, and are those dogs breeding good pups, all that sort of stuff. Just do a bit of research on it.
Yeah.
Great advice. Good advice. Earlier we spoke about starting pups and type of stock, but do you have any milestone expectations when you get a new pup in your camp?
As far as like age, you mean what they should be doing at what age? Or
100%.
Nah, mate, I don't. I just let the dog tell me. I don't push them. Like, you don't want to let your dog get out to 2 or 3 year old and just leave it in the cage and all that sort of stuff. But because you don't, it's not ready. Well, no, that's not right. But no, just let the dog tell you, mate. Once they're, if the main thing is be careful of is make sure their body's, strong enough, athletic enough, mature enough, that they can actually get around and foot sheep, head them properly and without cutting corners and all that sort of stuff. Worst thing you do is get a 4 or 5 month old pup and it's going really well and think you're going to break it in, and it starts to a bit slow and it can't catch up to sheep, and then it'll start chasing them, and get in the habit of chasing them rather than working them. So, just let them be physically able enough, before you start really doing, too much training. But like I said, sometimes with bitches and that, they're a bit more early mature, and I reckon they can, you can probably, often you can start training them a bit early, and then sometimes with dogs, they go through patches and they just take longer for some reason, I reckon. So yeah, let the dog tell you, mate. Don't put a hard, fast, age on what they should be doing this, what they should be doing that. So
yeah. And another question here from Denny. He's asked, what are your 3 top things you look for in a 12-month-old pup?
Yeah, so I'd say balance on their sheep, temperament, and then you got maybe say, feel and their confidence around stock and their calmness. If you've got a dog there that's got the balance, the feel, the temperament, and then they've got that confidence and calmness and stuff to go with it, was, it's pretty happy days, I reckon. You should be able to, you're a good chance of having something pretty decent on your hands. So
so another one here, Karen Higgins has asked, what's the most important thing you would do with a pup first up, regardless of on sheep or not?
Just get it bonded to you and make sure that it respects you. That's obviously very important. Going ahead with your training is the dog's got to bond with you. It's got to see you as the leader of the show, and you've got to take steps to make sure that you get that respect. So, because without that respect, you're not going to be able to train it, or not going to be able to train it properly or to a standard anyway, because it's, if it haven't got the respect and it hasn't got that bond, it's just, going to be prone to doing its own thing and not taking notice of you, and just going to make training really hard. So, getting that bond and getting that respect is probably, pretty important things to do first up.
Yeah.
It's a really important, mate. I've answered that fantastic. And, mate, you mentioned training there. Have you got an ideal training setup?
No, not really. I mean, I hear a lot of guys going, don't use a rake, do this, do that, don't use a round yard, use a square yard, don't do this. I think as long as you just got a small area, and the number one thing is when you're going to train dogs is quiet sheep. You got to have break sheep that aren't going to run away and tear off, and then it's up to you whether you got a triangle yard, a big Holden yard, a smaller yard. Just do whatever suits you. Where the dog's still got a bit of contact with the sheep. You don't want to, if you got quiet sheep, but you're out in a great big paddock and the sheep are standing there, but your dog's way out to Billio. That's not ideal neither. So it's still got to be in contact with the stock. But then I suppose to answer your question, if you got a small, a yard where, the dog can't get away too much from you, still got contact with the stock, then a bit of a forcing yard for later on in a race. Somewhere we can do a bit of forcing and a bit of tight work with your dog, and then a bigger area where you can do your casting and outside work and off balance work and all that. I think, and when you go to all these different places, that comes in many shapes and sizes. So, yeah, most people can make do with what they got,
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you pretty methodical in the way you train a pup? Like, you always try to go down the same kind of process?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, got a basic sort of framework. Yeah, yep. Some dogs you might, skip through it a bit earlier or do a couple of things at the same time. But yeah, it's sort of a basic order of probably how I do things. Yeah.
Yeah.
How often does that change, if it does? And what are the influences that change would help you, that would change it?
Yeah, probably, if you got a softer dog versus a harder dog, you might do some more different stuff in a different order with the softer dog. With the softer dog, you might do more tight work in a smaller yard to try and build its confidence up around sheep for a while. And then before you go out and do your other stuff. So you might, so with a dog that's real soft or something, you might, just put aside your other work for a while till you get a bit of confidence back in that dog, or get some confidence in that dog up close to sheep before you go on with some other stuff. Whereas if you had a harder dog that sort of got that pretty confident around sheep, you probably, you're taking a different approach with him, probably take an opposite approach with him, trying to, slow him down and just get him to settle around his sheep. So, yeah, that's where it might start to, change things up a bit.
Yep.
And you mentioned 3 sheep trialing and whatnot. Is there any, well, first of all, how long have you been trialing for? And then I'll go with the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, I've been trialing for a while, probably 30 years or so.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've been going for a fair while.
This looks technical, Laura. You put some thought into
No,
this.
I've been thinking about this one. First of all, have you done anything other than just 3 sheep trialing? Have you dabbled in anything else?
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of utility, yard dogging, and a little bit of cattle. Yeah,
Yep.
back in the day when we had more, when I had more practical work for my dogs.
But you just love the 3 sheep?
I like I sort of started off in the 3 sheep, and I just like the challenge of it.
Yeah.
To me, it's it's the precision of it and the challenge of it that
Yeah.
keeps me coming back. There's a lot of days where you don't go that well, but when you do have a good day, it's great feeling. That achievement of being able to put up a good run on 3 tough sheep or whatever, and your dog works
Yeah.
well. That's what that sort of feeling sort of keeps me coming back.
So the question I was going to ask was, someone coming into the 3 sheep world, what would you say they need to have on their dog before they go out and have a run?
Yeah, number one thing is make sure you can call it off stock.
Yep.
Number one thing, if things go awry, and they can, especially when you're starting out, you've got to be able to call that dog off stock. Dogs got to be able to balance sheep towards you. Got to have a stop. Got to have your sides on 360, anywhere in the circle either way. And you got to have try and have a bit of a cast on your dog. If you can get your dog up to the top of the ground there and get a bit of a stop on him, and and you can sort of call him left and right and pull him up and call him off, well, you could probably go and have a go,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And you mentioned just before you answer that question about the thing that hooks you is getting out, the precision, having a go. How about and putting a good score on a board? What about when you put a good score on a board with a dog you bred? Do you take a little bit more away from that, knowing it's something that you've bred yourself and put time into, foresight into it? Now you've have your bitch and you think about the dog, and then you've raised your pup, and you take a bit more away from that, like kind of hold yourself up a bit prouder.
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, maybe there's a little bit of more internal satisfaction there. Yeah, I can see what you're getting at. Yeah, especially if, like say you've thought about who you're going to breed to who, and you've bred it and you've trained it yourself and whatever. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, mate, you're right. Probably just adds a little bit more satisfaction to the job.
Yeah, I can see that, and I just think, yeah, I know I like to do with any dog, but one that I've bred myself, I just take a little bit more out of that myself. So thought I'd flick that back out and see if there's like-minded people there.
Yep.
And we're always seeing different types of trialing coming out and suggestions thrown up, mate. And is there anything that you'd like to see, a different style of trial, or maybe adapting a couple of different types of trials together in a particular way, or any obstacles you'd like to see in another format of trialing?
I quite like the utility trials. Just that I haven't got a dog to probably do it, or haven't trained a dog up to do it. But I quite like the idea of the utility trials. Yeah, like that's a good test of a dog. Got a decent cast and a gather, and poke them through a couple of obstacles outside, and then do a bit of a job in the yard. So I quite like that. And some of these ultimate stock dog things, they're good too. Good test of an all-round dog. So I like the idea of that. I haven't done any of it. Definitely not lately. Not since
Yes.
haven't got any practical work for my dogs. But I like the idea of all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just things like carrying sheep on different sides, and no two utility courses are the same. Like there's just always different. So I suppose you're always every dog's put to a different challenge.
Yeah, I suppose why I think of it, the Trans Tasman course in 3 sheep, it's a top course. It'd be good if we had more of that. Does take a bit longer to run them, but it's a really good course. It's the New Zealand sections you get in and help your dog a bit more and do the drive, and I think it's a brilliant course, that one. So stuff like that. It's a real good course to work.
So that encompasses the Maltese Cross, is that right?
Yeah, that's so it's all Aussie part up until the gap. So you pull them down yourself, go around you, and then walk up to the gap, go through the gap, and then that goes into the New Zealand drive, across to the cross, and then a drive again through the cross and to the bridge, and then when you get them over the bridge, it's back to the Aussie again. So it's real good course, test of your dog, test of your stockmanship. Yeah.
Just spicing things up a bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
Do you want to grab that?
Yeah, there's a question here from John Starr. He's asked, do you think quick footwork and cover can go along with walk-up strength, or does one trait make it hard to achieve the other?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I'll have to note that question down. And he's actually, sometimes those dogs have got that real good cover. What was the other part of the question? Cover and feel, or cover and
strength and walk-up.
Yep. So those dogs with a real good cover, they're worried about sheep getting away, so they don't want to. Not necessarily they're weak. They just don't want to. They're worried about sheep breaking, and they're thinking to themselves, if I come in here, you want me to come in here, boss. But if I come in here too hard or too fast, whatever, these sheep are going to break out over me, and I'm not going to. I don't want to do that. So sometimes, it's a bit hard to get those dogs to what we call just prick the bubble, come in and get that movement. Yeah, so it can make it a bit harder, but you can educate your dog. Some dogs will take to do them both and do it quite well, whereas other dogs that are a bit softer, they might be harder. Or those dogs with a real sticky eye, they'll be harder to get up there, and the dogs with a real sticky eye tend to pull on a bit more confrontation because the sheep are, they look like a big bad wolf's going to jump on them, try and grab them. So the stock aren't going to look away from them, with those dogs that are walking up with that creepy eye, then they stop, then they take a step. There's no way in the world the sheep want to look away from him. They see him as a big threat. So, it can cause an issue, but with some dogs you can get around it through education and doing the right thing with them.
Definitely. And there's another question just come through from Rosemary Newton. She has asked, when do you start your dog on only 3 sheep, and what obstacles do you use to start?
I think if you've got, you can overwork your dog on an obstacle, especially if they're having a bit of trouble. You can make them a bit sour on it. So just, be careful. So you can get all your education in a corner or in a yard or outside, but if you've got a bridge, you've got to have a bridge, I reckon. You can maybe be able to get away with not having a race, but I reckon you need a bridge and a pen, because the bridge is so different, because you've got the ramp where they've got to put sheep up on a ramp, and you've got to teach your dog to, and unless you actually got a bridge and teach your dog to do it, you're pretty rare that a dog will just, if it hasn't seen a bridge, will just go straight up there. They get pretty hesitant about it, so you've got to do the repetition with them, get them up there, get them comfortable up there, right on the top, and put a little pen out the front of the bridge or something like that to get them up there comfortable being close to sheep, and that takes a bit of time, So you definitely got to have a bridge, and you got to have a pen, teach them to, bit of cover, and also, get them round either side and the back of the pen sometimes, and teach them to come near your leg when you shut the gate and all that. So they're probably the 2 main ones. And as far as starting which on which, I think once you got the education on your dog, you got the sides to stop, and you got him under control, you can probably start working on either, really. It doesn't matter. But
so you go.
No, you're right. You go.
I was just going to say, so you're saying you actually want the dog to come up onto the top of the bridge and get comfortable up there with and without sheep?
Oh, sorry, no. Mostly just with sheep there.
Yeah,
just
okay.
Yeah.
So So you don't like to teach your dog to come up on the bridge, or like, because I've heard a bit of both, and so I'm just sort of asking you that question.
Do you mean come up on the bridge without sheep? You mean?
Yeah. So say the sheep were at the edge of the bridge. Do you want your dog to come up on the ramp part of the bridge, I guess, to push them up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every situation that you're going to get in a trial, if you can, sort of repeat it at home or simulate it at home, why not? But just be careful. That's why we've probably got a pen at the end of the bridge, or if you're going to put sheep at the right off the end of the bridge, a pen, and then you can put a couple of gates, one at the end of the bridge and one and halfway. Make sure you hold your sheep up there so they're not going to come back over your dog.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's going to bust your dog's confidence big time if you're trying to teach it, get up on the bridge and the sheep comes hurtling over the top of it.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of repair work to get that dog back up there. So,
when
especially you're starting out.
Yeah. And do you like the dog to learn to just bump the sheep off so they're like a meter away from the bridge, or do you like them sort of dropped right at the bottom, at the edge of the bridge? Have you got a theory on that?
What I do for my training is just have a pen at the end off the bridge at the end.
Yep.
So the sheep go up, and then I've also got a gate halfway along the bridge. But the sheep go up, and so they're standing on the ground in this small pen at the end of the bridge, and then I'll get my dog to come right up to the end of the bridge and just stand there, and gives the dog a bit of confidence because he's sort of higher than the sheep almost.
Yep.
So, and then I just make the dog stop there right at the end of the bridge, and then just open the pen up and make the dog stop there. And if sheep will walk out, or if they run out, make sure your dog stops there. Then I just walk back into the position that I would be at the trial, like where the ring was, and make him stop up there, and then call him back off the ridge and make him stop down on the ground in the wings. And then before I let him, go around him.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, yep.
I understand what you're saying now. So that makes a lot more sense now.
And at the beginning there, you mentioned about not doing the same obstacle too much because you sour the dog. How about the reverse of if you do it the same obstacle too much, the dog will start to anticipate everything and you won't make it sound movement out of it.
Yeah, so I can see what you're getting at there, Dan. I don't mind if your dog sort of starts to read the obstacle. That's like a good thing. Starts to read and line sheep up. That's a good thing. But as long as, like I said before, you can still get that command over instinct. So if you want to, if that dog thinks, oh no, I've got these lined up,
I've got to go
as long
get
as
around.
you can still pull it around in a position or how you want it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So there's nothing wrong with the dog anticipating lining sheep up by itself, as long as you can still command it and do what you want to do with it,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, otherwise just going to ping them back at you, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, a bit of both. So dog anticipating, that's good. You've still got the natural work in the dog. It's thinking for itself, but then you've still got the command and that movement that you want when you want it,
Yeah. And do you have a favourite trial to participate in, or one that you would like? Or you mentioned the USD there.
I quite like the Molong State Championship just because I was one of my first trials. I started out there, and it's a real nice ground and a nice spot, and I sort of grew up there, so I know quite a few people. Yeah, just a good spot to go and trial. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you reckon what do you feel your best trialing achievement is?
I suppose I got a bit of a thrill out of representing Australia the first time. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, awesome. How many times have you represented Australia?
Twice.
Beautiful.
That's awesome, mate.
Yeah.
Congrats. And do you still get nervous, and how do you handle any nerves?
Yeah, still get a bit nervous, but which is good. I mean, nerves is fine. I mean, if you got no nerves at all, that's when you probably start to worry. It means you don't care,
Yeah, definitely.
So nerves are fine. Sort of and they generally go away once you start working your dog. Yeah, I've found that. Like, obviously, when you're starting out, they're obviously, when you first start trialing, they're obviously a lot worse, and it's a matter of just keep going out there, just keep putting yourself under pressure, and and it's a matter of hopefully you get a bit better at handling the nerves.
Yeah, no, definitely. And throughout your travels, Australia and whatnot, is there something that you consistently see handlers struggle with, and where do you think they can improve?
Oh, geez, I don't know if I want to comment on that because I struggle. But
well, what about newbies, mate? What about newbies? People coming into it.
Yeah, mate. I did think of something. I do feel sorry for probably some of the people from the city that haven't had, sort of us people that grew up on farms and had all that experience working stock when we were younger and stuff. And the people that come in from the city and never been on a farm, never worked many stock, and that's probably maybe something sometimes they've got to try and get a bit better grip on. Maybe they struggle with, maybe when they first come into it. So,
yeah,
trying to get that handle on how to work stock and how to read stock,
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Any advice to someone wanting to pursue a career in the livestock industry?
Oh, look, any of this game like trial and working dogs, livestock, whatever, just try and seek out the successful people and just, get the information off them, buy the videos, buy the DVDs, go to the courses, talk to them, whatever it might be. Just do your research and go to the people that will, walk the walk and just pick their brain, get as much information. It's sort of ripe for the picking now. There's that much information out there now. There's DVDs, videos of all the good guys in all the games. So, hook in and just try and, get as much information as you can, learn as much as you can.
Yeah, beautiful.
And while speaking about information there, mate, is there someone you'd like us to see have a chat with here on Dog Talk?
Yeah, mate, I know you. I don't know if you can get Mick Hudson on, but he'd be good. But someone like either someone overseas from New Zealand, like a Lloyd Smith or someone like that, or he's a pretty good guy. Or even I'd like Tony McCallum. Be good to get him on too. He's got that much knowledge about dogs, not just stock dogs, but other dogs as well. It'd be good to get him on for a yarn. You might have to have 2 podcasts, but yeah, he'd be good to get on.
If I could remember as much as he's forgotten, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, mate, he knows, he's got more ability with dogs in his little toe than I'll have in the old body. So,
yeah. I like that. Is there a question that stood out to you tonight, and that viewer will win a bag of Enduro Plus or their choice of Enduro food?
Yeah, I like the question that asked about, how does the dog with the cover and hold, how does that affect him when you go to, teach that dog to walk up, and does having that ability affect his ability to do that? So, yeah, I like that question.
Beautiful. Well, that was John Starr. So if he could get in contact with us with his details, that'd be great, and we'll get Enduro to get that bag off.
And we actually had a flurry of questions there at the end, Bill. And thanks to the people that asked those. We actually covered most of those a bit earlier on, and we're a bit wary of how long we've actually stole off you tonight as well.
Mate, that's fine. Mate, keep going if you want to. That doesn't worry me. But
no, you're all right, mate. Mate, would like to thank all our members for tuning in tonight, and Bill for your time. But unfortunately, we don't let you go that easy, mate.
One last question, as always. If you had to choose between fighting 20 horses the size of ducks or 1 duck the size of a horse, which one would you take on and why?
I'm thinking, so I'm a little bit entrepreneurial. I like the 20 horses the size of ducks. Because, you've seen those pig races they have. I reckon if you could train those little horses up and put something on them to race around, mate, I reckon you'd make a heap of money.
They have those at the Hawkesbury Show, actually. They're an absolute attraction.
races.
The little pig races,
Yeah.
yeah. They have the food at the end. They run through the maze.
Yep.
You are onto something there, mate. I'd love to see that.
That business would go off, I reckon.
You know, I'd like to see like 20 little ponies at a dog trial and like a whole heap of grown men trying to ride them around a maze. Might be onto something.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Pleasure. It's been a pleasure, mate. I appreciate you getting me on. Hopefully I helped someone anyway.
Mate,
definitely helped me. So
I'm sure you did. I'll listen back to this one a couple of times. And thanks to everyone for logging on tonight and your questions and everyone listening back. And please remember, we learn every day. And the day we stop learning from each other will be a sad day.
thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
No worries.